Okay, welcome everyone. First webinar of 2026. We're going to give it just another, I don't know, 60, 90 seconds, just over a minute, and just make sure anyone that wants to get in can get in. As always, we have things set up that there's no question or anything like that during this call. Everything will be recorded afterwards. If you have any questions, anything that does pop up, we encourage you to write them down. We encourage you to drop us a note or email or anything else, and please do follow up with us as we cover things tonight. This topic that we have, what's new with Social Security. So, 8 topics to watch in 2026 is what we're looking at. Again, I'll just give it another minute and we'll make sure we get started promptly for 6:30 for everyone. Okay, 6:30 on the dot. Savvy Social Security planning. What's new with Social Security? 8 topics to watch in 2026. As always, we like to jump in and first just talk a little bit about our purpose, what it is that we do, and helping our clients and helping them align their actions with their intentions. That is our purpose, helping you live for today while planning for tomorrow. It's not all about tomorrow. You also want to live and enjoy each day. Life can be unpredictable, so that's why we have to lay out plans, but also challenge those plans because life might throw curveballs at us as well. So we work with our clients, identify short-term, long-term goals, all the things needed for them to feel that they can, live the lives that they want to live. That's our purpose, is aligning people's actions with their intentions and helping them live the lives that they want to. The approach we take with that when it comes to our retirees and pre-retirees is confidently guiding you to and through retirement. There's 4 key elements that you have to be proficient or experts in to really work in the retirement space. You got to understand Social Security. You have to understand Social Security planning, Medicare planning, healthcare and retirement, tax planning. Taxes, if anything, just come under a, a magnification, a microscope when it comes to retirement versus their working years. And long-term care. What if at some point in my life I need some help or assistance or anything? How would that work out? What does that look like? So we run events on all these areas. And it takes a team to do all the things that we do day in and day out. So we have a team. So Peak Path Retirement Advisors, myself, Michael Perkins, Jordaniel Neville, Melissa Joyce, Cassie Foley, it's all of us here working to support you. I think something that we haven't emphasized necessarily enough is also the power of partnership. So while our clients work directly with us and it's very personal, the communication, everything we do is directly with that team of 4 people in our Peak Path retirement team. But we also are partnered with Cetera Investors, a very large institution with thousands of advisors across the country. And they have a lot of tools, resources, infrastructure that we tap into and get access to. It's how we are able to do all the things we do, whether it's income projection plans that we're working on, tax planning that we're doing, access to advanced planning teams for high net worth services, trust companies when needed, CPA and legal teams for advanced planning needs. So there's just a lot of support that we have behind us. So I thought this was something Melissa put this piece together for us to really emphasize how it works. We're the designated team working with you, but there's a very large institution, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of resources that we have behind us through our partnership with Cetera Investors that allows us to do all the things that we do. And one of the things we do is we hold these educational events. So first webinar Wednesday of 2026, we have more upcoming. What you're looking at is some screenshots from our website. So peakpathra.com. That brings you to our website. There you can find upcoming events. You can find past events. We started recording these events last year, so you can still access those recordings. This event will be on there as well. We say to share the wealth. We get these invites to events we're holding, share them, pass them along. Friends, family, colleagues, right? Pass these things along, pass along the recordings. There's a lot of good information. We really believe just strongly in providing education. That's what allows people to align their actions with their intentions. So, what is new? Jumping into Social Security, 8 topics that we're going to cover for 2026. What is new with Social Security? We're going to talk about the cost of living adjustment, the earnings test, annual earnings test, Social Security taxes, payroll taxes, benefit taxes, Medicare premiums, Medicare dates to watch, the status of Social Security, the trust fund. Any proposals for reform that are there. So taking a look actually at Social Security and the trust fund and proposals for reform. Updates to claiming strategies, and then WEP and GPO, the windfall provision and government pension offset that was repealed this past year. So first, cost of living adjustment. So for those of you that don't know, Social Security does provide cost of living adjustments. Not always, but most times. So Social Security checks went up or going up in 2026. There was a cost of living adjustment. There was also a new earnings test threshold and also higher Social Security wage base. We'll cover that as well, but the wage base that pays into Social Security also increased. So 2026, the cost of living adjustment, the raise that was given was 2.8% for Social Security. So if you're someone that was receiving, say, a check for $2,500 a month, that's a $70 increase. If you're someone that was getting a bigger, frothier check, about $4,000, maybe you delayed Social Security, that could be over a $100, $112 increase on that check. So perspective of what that cost of living adjustment is, 2.8%. There's years where it's been higher, there's years where it's been lower, there's years that there's been zero. We've had really high years, like 2022 was 5.9% during those high inflation periods. But the average historical cost of living adjustment is 2.5%. So we're right around that average mark right now, actually just right above that. So that's just some perspective on what that cost of living adjustment is. How it's calculated, they look at the consumer price index. So that's what they choose to base it on at this point in time. That's what it's based on. They look at it, the CPIW though. So they're looking at urban areas, urban wage earners, and seeing what the cost increases were in those areas specifically. And that's what they're basing those raises off of. And the other thing that's noted here is just unclaimed benefits also raised by COLA. So just because you're not receiving a check now, if you're still waiting to claim your Social Security benefit, does not mean that you're not impacted by the cost of living adjustment. Whether you're getting your check and getting that physical raise now, or if your check's waiting for you, that check is going up by that cost of living adjustment. So everyone benefits, whether you are receiving a check now or waiting to get it. So earnings test, this is something that is only applicable to those that actually claim their Social Security benefits early. They take them before their full retirement age and they are still working. Okay, so only if you claim before your full retirement age and you're still working does this apply to you at all. But what it is in 2026, they have this threshold. It went up to $24,480, up from the $23,400 the year previously. And what that means is just if you are claiming Social Security early before full retirement age, you're still working. You can only earn a certain amount of money before they start withholding some of your Social Security check. Okay? Essentially, every $2 earned above that 24,480 number, they start withholding a dollar from your benefit. Essentially saying if you're claiming early, you're still working, do you need this money at this point in time? So they start withholding things. There's this special period as well that if you're receiving benefits and turn full retirement age in 2026, that if you started last year and this is the year you're going to turn full retirement age, there's a different number that they use, 65,000, a different formula, $1 for every $3. But again, the earnings test is something you want to be aware of, but it only applies if you are claiming early and you are still working. So you look at file for Social Security in 2026, you're under full retirement age, you continue to work, your benefit will be withheld if any month you make more than that $2,040. So it's not when you cross that annual number, it's when you're projecting to cross it. Those monies are not just spent and gone too, they're just kind of withheld for you. So they start withholding them and they come back to you later in your check. At full retirement age, the thing I should have mentioned also is you could still be working and at full retirement age get your full check. There's no longer any earnings test. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year working and still get your full Social Security and have no impact on it at all. You'll pay taxes on the income always, but that's it. Um, Payroll taxes in 2026. And specifically what we're talking about here with payroll tax is Social Security payroll taxes. So not everyone knows this, but Social Security You only pay into it up to a certain amount of income. When you cross that amount of income, they're no longer withholding any money from you for Social Security. And that maximum earnings went up to $184,500 in 2026. It was at 176.1 previously. So what that means is up to 184.5, you have part of your check that is getting carved off and set aside for Social Security. Above 184.5, you no longer have that happening. So some people, when they cross that number, it looks like their take-home pay checks, it's almost like they got a raise at the end of the year because they already capped out. So Social Security is no longer withholding any money from them. And that amount that is withheld hasn't changed. So the payroll tax rates have not changed. Social Security, an employee pays 6.2%. So 6.2 of that 184.5 is going into Social Security for that future lifetime income stream you will receive. And your employer pays the other half of 6.2%. But if you are self-employed, you do pay both parts, the employee and employer. So it's a total of 12.4% that actually goes in. But if you're a W-2 employee, you're only paying the 6.2. No change for Medicare tax as well. That's 1.45, almost 1.5% that you pay on all earnings. So there's not a cap at that 184.5 number. So that's something that if you ever look at your Social Security earnings statement, they'll show you right on there what your Social Security tax earnings was and what your Medicare tax earnings were. And if you're over that max Social Security, you'll start seeing that those numbers look different. But there it's 145 per employee per employer, so 2.9% if you are self-employed. So the maximum someone would pay in 2026, if you paid in that 6.2%, that 0.062, the math on 184.5 is just over $11,000 into Social Security. If you're self-employed and paying both parts, double that, it's almost $23,000. So that's how we pay into Social Security, right? What they're withholding and setting aside the money. Now, what about when we're getting Social Security? What's the taxation of the actual Social Security benefits that we're receiving? So, taxation of Social Security benefits. Social Security is actually taxed beneficially. Most states, even if they have state income tax, don't tax Social Security. Some do. So, you do want to check, but most don't. For example, Massachusetts does not. The other thing is, if you're under a certain amount of income, the top line, if you see married filing jointly under $32,000, you actually don't pay any federal tax on Social Security. It's a tax rate of zero, meaning none of the money that you get from Social Security counts towards your taxable income. 32,000 to 44, half the check counts towards it. And if you're over 44,000, 85% of the check is taxable. So even in the higher level, the most it ever gets is 85% of the check is taxable. So no matter what, 15% of your Social Security check is always federally tax-free. Now, the thing that you see in that middle column, though, of what those numbers, that 32 is based on, is provisional income. Asterisk, look down below. Provisional income equals AGI plus one half Social Security benefit plus tax exempt interest. It's just another wrinkle. It's another thing that makes it a little more challenging to track. You have to know, what is my provisional income? What's it projected to be now when I first retire? What's it projected to be in these later years? How can I navigate that? So adjusted gross income, half my Social Security benefits, adding back in any tax exempt interest. This is what gets us into tax planning. Because if we can keep you paying 0% on your Social Security tax, that saves you a whole lot of money. If we can keep you at 50 compared to 85, that saves you a whole lot of money. But some of the things we have to watch out for are things like required minimum distributions. So what's new with required minimum distributions, these RMDs, right now the age that starts them is age 73. It used to be 70 and a half, then it moved to 72. Now it's out at 73. IRS tables, how they do the math that tells us, hey, what is this required amount I have to take? They're based on life expectancy tables, and we are living longer and longer. So it's allowing us to take less because they're projecting we're going to live longer. So they're projecting that we have to take less on a regular basis over a longer period of time. But what we have to watch with these RMDs, these required distributions, is what if they put you in a higher tax bracket? What if they cross one of those provisional income lines? Even if you didn't need the money to spend it, You didn't actually take this money out of your account to spend it, but you had to take the required distribution, which triggers taxes, which all of a sudden you might be over a threshold you were watching and could have happily just stayed under because you didn't actually need the income from that. So that's where tax planning and projections come into play. Of okay, what are my projected RMDs? How's that going to change my tax landscape? Because once they start coming, there's no stopping them. They are a required minimum distribution. So, tax planning, heading off taxes on Social Security benefits. So, what we do when we're looking at tax plans and projecting things ahead is sometimes, hey, maybe we need to start drawing down your IRAs before you actually need them. Drawing them down. Maybe it's something that we're drawing them down, we're setting aside the money somewhere else. We're essentially choosing to take some of that money out and pay tax now. And the only reason we would do that, same thing with a conversion to a Roth. Same thing. You're choosing to pay tax on this pre-tax taxable money and then put it into a Roth money to save it for later, but you're paying tax. The only reason we would ever do that is because it's to your benefit. That it is actually, we're doing the math and saying, hey, we're going to pay less money in tax by paying tax now than we are if we kick this can down the road. So it's one of those things that the delaying and deferment of taxes does not always mean that you're going to pay less in taxes. You might be just backing yourself into eventually a wall where you have no choice, no option, required distributions are happening. Now you're in a certain tax bracket, you're triggering more Social Security tax. And we'll get into some things with Medicare and how that can impact your Medicare premiums a little further on as well. But the other third tip here is Social Security. When and how do you claim Social Security as well? So if you're claiming that later and deferring it, that sometimes that allows some of those earlier years of retirement where we can draw down IRAs, convert to Roths, do some things where we don't have your Social Security check subject to those taxes because it only starts once you start getting that check. So going into the Medicare premiums and 2026 Medicare premiums, they did go up. So Medicare premiums, the Part B base premium, 202.90. It was 185. So it went up almost 10%. Some people pay more. If you cross a certain line, these letters here, IRMAA, IRMA, we call it, or income related monthly adjustments. There's just certain lines that if you cross, you might have to pay higher premiums, but the base is 202.90. Now, this year where Medicare did go up in cost, there is something related to Medicare premiums that's called hold harmless provision. So Social Security got a raise this year, 2.8%. And that 2.8% is on usually a larger number. Maybe it's $2,000, $2,500, your monthly benefit amount. That 2.8% raise. Medicare premium went up by 9.7, almost 10%. But that went up by, 10% on $185. So you can see just the math there. What they do is they make sure this hold harmless provision that the Medicare premium dollar wise could not go up more than what your Social Security COLA would cover. So essentially, you will not, because of Medicare increasing, ever get a smaller Social Security check. It might consume the raise, meaning, hey, there was a 2.8% raise in Social Security, but I didn't actually get a raise because my Medicare premiums went up and it kind of washed itself out that I'm still getting the same amount of money. But it's not that I'm getting less because of Medicare premiums going up. This year, the math worked out that there was no hold harmless provision that was needed. The 2.8% on benefits versus the 9.7 on Medicare. The 2.8, outweighed the increase on the Medicare premiums. But just something to know that it's never going to send you backwards and have a lower check, the Medicare premiums increasing. It might just prevent you from getting that increase or raise. Now, these income related monthly adjustments, that IRMA that we were talking about, that applies to Medicare premiums. There's a lot of words on this page to how that's all calculated. I think the next slide does a better job clarifying things when we look at a chart with some numbers. So the first line you can see in the middle column, Part B monthly premium paid to Medicare. That's that 202.90 number I mentioned before. That's the base premium amount. If you look to the left of there, there's that MAGI, modified adjusted gross income, joint modified, another wrinkle to make it a little more challenging for us to track and monitor. But That means if it's under 218,000, your joint household modified adjusted gross income is under 218, you pay that base premium amount. If you cross that, you go to the second row down. If you cross it by a dollar, $1, you make 218,001. Now you have that middle column, 202.90. Go to the right of that, you also then have an additional $81.20 added on top of that, plus anything you have for your drug plan, whether it's original Medicare, Medicare Advantage, whatever it is, but your drug plan is also going to go up in cost, 1450. So it's $95 or so that you have an increased Medicare cost per individual per month if you cross that line by a dollar. So it's a line you want to be aware of and know that you're not crossing it just by mistake. And there's continues to be lines, right, where you can go down the chart and the numbers get even larger. You cross 274 by a dollar. And now, oh my God, it's the Medicare Part B premium 202.90. The increase is 202.90. The Medicare Part D premium went up by 37.50. Right, so almost $250 per individual per month increase. That's almost $6,000 more per year that we're spending in Medicare cost. So things that we just have to watch and monitor, and this is also part of projecting and tax planning as well, that you can project to see what these um, projected IRMA levels might be, and if there's a way to avoid them. But typically, the best thing is being ahead and looking ahead to see if there's things we can do now to avoid it when that time comes. And Medicare is never set it and forget it. Healthcare plays a most, I mean, really, most everything in your financial life is never going to be total set it and forget it. We got to monitor, we got to adjust. So there's Medicare dates to watch. January 1st to March 31st is the regular general enrollment period for Medicare. It's also now when you can disenroll from Medicare Advantage plan if you want to switch to original Medicare. So that's something we cover more in our Medicare webinars, but you have choices when you go on Medicare to where and how you get your additional coverages. So there's the basic parts, part A and B, and then there's the drug plan or any supplemental coverage, and that's where you get into these advantage plans, and those are conversations for another day. But we just want you to know is that January 1st to March 31st, that's that time to make changes. And then you also have the annual open enrollment period, October 15th to December 7th. So if you are looking to make a plan change, that is the time when you would review. Plans are always changing. You want to look at what the current plan options are in your area because you will have the option now to make changes on these plans. So just dates to be aware of and dates to watch. Never set and forget it. You want to check those renewal periods. So the future of Social Security, trust fund, right? So Social Security is backed by a trust fund. There's money that backs this up. The numbers that we have, reported are end in 2024 as of right now, but 12/31/2023, there was $2.788 trillion in the trust fund. By the end of 2024, that was 2.721. So there was a decrease in assets. The trust fund did not grow, it shrunk by $67 billion. Still a substantial sum of money in there. But what has the headlines and some of the things you see out there, some of the scary news and sometimes the scare tactics. But there are things that will have to be addressed because right now, they are projecting that as of 2034, Social Security would not be able to pay the projected promised benefits. They'd only be able to pay up to 81% of the projected promised benefits. And there's projections there, right? Who's claiming at what points of time and people's life expectancies and when they're passing away or, right, getting benefits or not getting benefits, but projections, right? So there is some problems that are coming if not resolved. Now you can see from 2034 to 2099, it only changes from 81 to 72% if nothing is done right now. So it's not that things are falling off a cliff, but there's something that's coming that if we don't make some adjustments, it's not going to be solvent enough to pay 100% of those promised benefits. So what would it take to restore solvency? What would it take to get things right? One thing, what we talked about earlier, was increase the maximum earnings subject to tax. Now it's up to 184.5. So that's more money going into the pot, right? That's money that's being taxed and paid into the Social Security benefits because we're at a heightened time with baby boomers, retiring that there's a large amount of people going in and claiming benefits, and there's the workforce behind them that's paying into it that cover these things. So that's where some of these squeeze and choke points are happening. Other things are raise their normal retirement age. Right now, anyone born between 1943 and 54 had a full retirement age of 66. Anyone born after 1960 is 67. So where you were born in 1960 or 2000, right now your full retirement age is 67. With us living longer and longer, that's something that is likely for them to roll out a move as they have done previously. But I wouldn't say it's going to be for anyone born in 1970 or 1965 that are going to move it out for. But okay, maybe it's the people born in 1980, 1990, things like that, that eventually, with life expectancies going, they're moving out those normal retirement ages. Lower benefits for future retirees. Maybe there's just things where they can't give those same type of raises that they have. Maybe they're just the change in the math that people aren't going to get the same percentage of their paycheck. We find maybe the cost of living they could adjust it somewhat, but the three and four are the seem to be the more challenging ones. If you think about how these things would be done, these are things that would actually have to be approved in Congress, things that would have to be voted and passed. And things that would cause harm or face a lot of scrutiny would be things like three and four. So we find the more likely ones are one and two. Will Congress address Social Security this year? Unlikely. It's unlikely because there's no immediate danger. The last time they really went in and have to make a real change to Social Security was back in 1983. And it was a time where they were much closer to having a theoretical situation where they were underfunded. But there are things that they could do. It's just going to be okay, when is that the priority item that goes to the top that's actually going to get addressed? Claiming strategies, what we're talking about here is Social Security claiming. So when do I start getting my benefits? When do I personally start getting them? If it's a husband and wife or a couple in a household, married couple, how do we coordinate those benefits? Does one claim now, one claim later? Do we both claim at the same time? What are the strategies? So some updates here. Some of these kind of old news, but some of the things that we could do sometime back when we started running these seminars, I think it was 2015. Um, was it 2015? It might have been sooner than that. But anyways, things we used to talk about was file and suspend. It gone for good. So those things are gone for good. So certain strategies we don't have to dig any more into. You can always follow up and if you want to learn more about it. But there used to be things where you could file and suspend benefits, claim now, claim more later. These everyone is grandfathered out of those based on the ages that they made changes. But there are still spousal benefits. Lower earning spouses can receive 50% of the higher earner spouses primary insurance amount, PIA, essentially just what their full retirement benefit would be. So a lower earner spouse, instead of getting their own check, could actually get half of their spouse's check if it was greater. So you get the better of the two. Rules there though, if you claim before your full retirement age, it is reduced. So anytime you're starting the check sooner, you're gonna get less because you're potentially getting it for longer. So it's just adjusted down. The higher earning spouse has to have claimed their benefits. And there's no delayed credits on spousal benefits, where your own benefit, if you're waiting to take it, it increases, but spousal benefits, there's no increases for waiting. Once you're at full retirement age, that's as large as the check would be. A big news and big thing that happened this last year that did affect a number of people in Massachusetts was the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset were repealed. So in 2025, those actually got repealed. And what happened with that, and this is if anyone had worked in a public pension type of job and Social Security, but there were some retro checks that went for some back pay. There was these rules that they would withhold certain amounts of Social Security benefits because individuals had pensions, and that even affected survivor situations. So that was passed, and that was something where there were increases in Social Security checks for a lot of individuals out there. Also, some retro paychecks, some lump sums that came through for some to catch up. So I know for many of our clients that were positively affected by that, it was a big, big win this past year. It's important to do checkups always in life, but Social Security is the same. where nothing is set it and forget it. So you want to think of things. Could this be you? A married person who never added on their spousal benefit after their husband filed for their benefit. So maybe you claimed your check and it was a lower check. And then your husband or wife, they claimed their check. And hey, half their check, which would be your spousal benefit, is actually higher than what you're receiving now. Did you make that switch? So if someone didn't alert you to it when they were going and claiming at, say, the Social Security office or online, or if you're doing it online, might not be any alert to it. Did you make that switch? Do you know that you're entitled to a higher benefit? A divorced person, could you claim a benefit on your ex-spouse? Maybe you didn't know that you could do that, and you can. And would that be higher than your check? Maybe you had a ex-spouse that's now deceased. You might be eligible for a survivor benefit. So as long as that had been married for over 10 years, you are always allowed for these spousal benefits, divorce spousal benefits, divorce survivor benefits. So it could be something that if they had passed away, you might actually be entitled to a survivor benefit that could be higher than your own benefit. So Social Security checkups just identify if there is any of these scenarios that you could maybe be affected by. What are the claiming strategies that make sense for you? Just seeing how Social Security fits into your overall financial picture, whether you're on Social Security now and updating and tweaking things, or if you're waiting and planning to when you start, and we want to do some of those tax planning and projections and seeing when do I start claiming Social Security and how's that fit into the overall plan. That's what we do. Social Security is one of those things that is just too important for guesswork. It is something that is a lifetime check. And when you add up, if it's $3,000 a month that you receive, $36,000 a year that you receive, you get that for 20, 30 years. It's a very large check, and that's for one individual. So it is something that we do not want to leave up to guesswork. So that concludes things tonight for covering Social Security. Before I let you go, we do want to let you know, and you should have received invitations from us as well. We have another webinar set for next Wednesday, the 25th. This one's at 12 p.m. noon. And that's actually with Clark, an investment manager that we use, an institutional money manager. And it's going to be all about the markets today and what the current market outlook is. So, highly encourage everyone to attend that. We will have this recorded, again, posted on our website so you can access it and share it. We'll also have that Clark one accessible as well, but we're excited for what they're going to deliver to us. I know we'll be listening in there as well, but would encourage you also. And please, again, just don't keep it a secret and feel free to share things. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Take care.